A man in a wax jacket just out-earned Britain's biggest breweries. From a barn full of barley nobody wanted. That's the story everyone knows. Farmer can't sell his grain, brews it instead, gets lucky. Sweet, simple, completely wrong. Because 18 months before that accidental harvest, someone had already registered a brewery trademark. Someone had already filed planning permission for a building that, officially, didn't need to exist yet. That someone was Clarkson. Here's the timeline nobody talks about. The trademark for Hawkstone went in months before that barley crop was even in the ground. The planning application for the brewery was filed before Amazon had greenlit a single camera. So the desperate farmer with nowhere to turn story, the one that got repeated by journalists, industry analysts, even supermarket buying teams, was already old news to the man who wrote it. And that's the part worth sitting with. It didn't just fool viewers, it fooled the professionals. Procurement teams at major chains thought they were doing a feel-good favor for a bumbling TV personality. They were negotiating with someone who'd spent 12 years studying British brewing before the cameras ever showed up. When a story is that clean, that easy to root for, that's usually the tell. Nobody stumbles into a business plan detailed enough to make a venture capitalist nervous. Big breweries win on one law: more volume, lower cost per unit. Centralize everything. Source globally. Spend hundreds of millions on ads. Hawkstone did the exact inverse. Local sourcing. Visible supply chain. Zero traditional advertising. Higher price. Smaller batches. On paper, every rule broken. And it's working. Thousands of pubs. Shelf space in every major supermarket. 3 expansions in 4 years. While running costs roughly 30% higher per liter than a mass market lager. That's not inefficiency. That's a different business model entirely, and customers are choosing it on purpose. In 2022, Hawkstone went straight to independent pubs, the ones getting squeezed for 20 years by supermarket six-packs sitting at home cheaper than a pint out. Within 6 months, hundreds of pubs signed on. The big players leaned on their distributors to block it. None of it stuck, because Clarkson wasn't selling beer to those landlords. He was selling them a reason for someone to leave the house. Pubs stocking Hawkstone weren't seeing beer sales tick up. They were seeing food, drinks, everything climb, because people were traveling specifically to find it. That's not a supply deal. That's a destination product. The big breweries had no playbook for competing with that, because their whole model has never needed one. Everyone knows the brewery's revenue. What gets walked past is the second company, the one handling merchandise, licensing, brand partnerships. Reportedly generating close to as much as the beer itself, at a higher margin. Read that again. The caps and glasses are more profitable than the drink they're advertising. Every person wearing one is a walking ad who paid for the privilege. Compare that to what a major brewer spends on traditional advertising in a year. Money buying eyeballs. Clarkson has people paying him to watch the show, then going out to find the product afterward. There isn't a line item in a marketing department that captures that conversion rate, because nothing in that department was built to sell a personality instead of a product. This is where it gets genuinely clever. Celebrity drinks brands follow one script. License the name. Let an existing company run everything. Collect a check. Ryan Reynolds and Aviation Gin. George Clooney and Casamigos. Clarkson refused that model. He built the brewery. He owns the supply chain. He employs the staff. Which means when a major brewer reportedly circled with an acquisition offer, they ran into a wall. You can't buy Hawkstone and quietly swap out the local sourcing to cut costs. Because the local sourcing is the product. Strip it out and you haven't bought a brand. You've bought an empty bottle with a famous name on it, and the customers who made it valuable will know within a week. That's the trap most acquirers walk into. They think they're buying the name. They're actually buying a promise. And the moment you break it, the value goes with it. Now there's a franchise plan on the table. Not one giant brewery, regional ones, each sourcing barley locally, each employing local workers. Industry analysts are calling it unworkable. Here's why that's the wrong read. Every regional farmer who supplies barley to a local Hawkstone site becomes an advocate. Every local hire becomes part of the story. You're not expanding a drinks business. You're building a network of people with a financial stake in it succeeding. That's not something a marketing budget can replicate. It has to be built, town by town. And it's already spreading beyond Hawkstone. Smaller producers who watch this play out are quietly copying the blueprint. Local sourcing, transparent production, no traditional ad spend, because they don't need a TV show anymore. They just need an audience, and that's cheaper to build than it's ever been. So here's the actual question worth asking. Not, how did a farmer get lucky with beer? But, what happens to an entire industry when the winning move stops being scale and starts being trust? Because that shift isn't staying in brewing. If you want the next one before it's obvious, the industry, the person, the 18 months of quiet work everyone mistakes for luck, that's exactly what's coming next on this channel. Subscribe and I'll show you where it's happening right now.